Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. This video I want to share with you the life and career of Pistol Pete Reiser, and I've been looking forward to doing this for a very long time. And this is a 1948 Bowman short print or a single print. It's not his rookie. He has a 1941 double play where he's also on the Brooklyn Dodgers. But I had heard about Pistol Pete well before I was a vintage card collector, and I wanted to kind of dive into his story, and I thought it was really fascinating. A lot of card collectors that I had talked to about this guy said that he was probably one of the best ball players of his generation, and things just kind of fell apart for the guy as he fell apart. And there's actually a reason why that I want to kind of discuss with you guys today. I did get a few other Pete Reiser cards too, and this is a 1952 Topps. I really like this card. I'm not the biggest fan of 1952 Topps. I just have to say that I think they were overrated. I didn't really feel that way when I was a kid. I really wanted to add a few to my collection, 52 Topps, and I had heard a lot about 52 Topps from a lot of older card collectors who would have seen these guys play in the early 1950s. So I bought my first 52 Topps at I think $30, and you guys can get those cards a lot cheaper. But I didn't know any better because I was like 16 or so, 15 or 16 when I bought my first 52 Topps. I have a historical appreciation for 1952 Topps, but I also have like a love-hate relationship with this set too, and I'll get into that at some point in time. But I do like some of the cards in this set, so it's not like a complete washout. And my dad would have collected these cards back in like the 1960s or 70s, and he would have seen, or at least my uncles would have seen this guy play. And so here he is on the Indians. And then I have another card that I really want to show you guys, and it's this right here. And this is autographed. And he joined the Field of Dreams in 1981. So he kind of missed out on a lot of the shows back in obviously in the 1980s. So his autograph, and I this probably from the 1970s when he autographed this. Today I kind of figured that I would share with you his life and his career because I find it very interesting, and a lot of other collectors do too. He's got like a cult following, where it's kind of unusual because he's been gone for like 45 years, and he's still very popular among vintage card collectors, and he's still remembered too to this day, which is really interesting to me. So I think you guys are going to find this fascinating as I did. So here we go. This is from the Elwood Call Leader, June 5th, 1947. Pete Reiser may be lost for season. Pete Reiser, the game little trooper of the Dodgers, lay in a heap below the concrete wall in center field. The official scorer had credited Cully Rickard of the Pirates with a home run, and Ebbets Field, for once, was like a cemetery. Reiser was unconscious when teammates reached him, but still clutched firmly in his glove was the ball he had risked his neck to catch, and the scorer hastily marked Rickard out. Today, all over Flatbush, there was a growing fear that the home run Rickard didn't get may have cost Brooklyn another flag. For Pistol Pete, the big gun of the Dodgers lay in Brooklyn's Swedish hospital with injuries described by club physician Dominic Rossi as bad concussions and lacerations along the right side of his head. It was just one more tragic episode in the career of as game a player as ever hitched on a pair of baseball flannels. Last year, 4 days before the season ended, Reiser's battling spirit cost him a broken ankle in a game with the Phillies, and Dodger president Branch Rickey swears Brooklyn would have beaten out the Cards with Reiser in the lineup for the final games. It was the fourth time in Reiser's career that he had come out second best in his Don Quixote battles with concrete walls. When revived last night, he said he had no recollection of anything except catching that fly. The Dodgers, with Reiser's pal Pee Wee Reese supplying most of the punch on a grand slam homer, won the costly game 9-4, making it three straight over Pittsburgh and moving into a virtual tie for first place, 4 points behind the deadlocked Cubs and Giants. Bruce Edwards also hit a homer with one man a base, and Ralph Kiner and Hank Greenberg, the Pirate Homer twins, each got one off Ralph Branca, who was otherwise effective in scoring his sixth victory. He struck out 9 batters. Reese's homer was the first grand slammer for the Dodgers in 2 years. Cast off Charlie Barrett, who won only 2 games with the Cardinals last season, to plague them at Boston, hurling a 6-hit 3-1 victory for the Braves, in which Nenny Fernandez and another ex-Cardinal, Danny Litweiler, provided the winning margin with successive homers in the sixth. It was Barrett's third victory and the second in which he didn't walk a man. And I'm going to read another thing here too. It says right underneath, Cubs take Giants. The Cubs squared accounts with the Giants in New York on the 4-hit pitching of Hank Browdry, who held them hitless for the first 4 innings, and likewise did not walk a batter in a 6-0 triumph. Bill Swish Nicholson hit a homer, and Clyde McCullough got 2 singles and a triple to lead the 10-hit Chicago attack. The Phillies defeated the Reds for the 6th time in 7 games, 9-2 at Philadelphia, and Ken Hanselman yielded 6 hits, and his mates, paced by Del Ennis, who got 3 singles, made 12 off 3 Cincinnati hurlers. Bob Feller, burning in his old fast one again, won his first game since May 18th, beating the Senators 6-2 at Cleveland on 8 scattered hits. He struck out 7 batters and aided his cause at bat with 2 doubles and a single, scoring 3 runs. Fat Pat Siri hit a Cleveland homer. The Yankees roared back with 18 hits good for 33 bases to defeat the Tigers at Detroit 17-8 after losing the opener 6-2 on timely hitting by the Bengals, who made 6 hits good for as many runs. 2 Tigers players, Dick Wakefield and George Kell, went out of the first game with injuries. Wakefield twisted his knee, and Kell suffered deep cuts on his hand when spiked by George Snuffy Sternweiss. This is from the New York Daily News, October 28, 1981. Pete Reiser, He Missed the Hall by a Wall, by Dick Young. 33 years after he received the last rites of the Catholic Church at Ebbets Field, Pete Reiser is dead. That's how tough Pete Reiser was. No man who put on a baseball uniform ever played the game harder than Harold Patrick Reiser. That was his real name. But to the people of Brooklyn, New York, when that was the center of the baseball universe, he was Pete Reiser, or Pistol Pete Reiser, who could fire his bat from either side of the plate. He could run, he could throw, he could catch, and he could do them all superbly at age 18. The only reason he wasn't called another Mickey Mantle is that he came before Mickey Mantle. He was called another Ty Cobb, which isn't bad either. Maybe some of you kids wonder why you never heard of Pete Reiser if he was that good. The reason is he wasn't that good for that long. He had his thing for running into walls after fly balls and standing his ground against knockdown pitchers. So his head kept taking this awful punishment, and when it wasn't his head, it was his shoulder, which he broke diving for a ball. He was in the service then, playing an army team, And when somebody asked him what he would do if he couldn't throw again when he got back to the Dodgers, he said, "I'll just throw left-handed." That's another thing, he was ambidextrous. The shoulder was wired together, and when he came back to Brooklyn after World War II, but he was never the same. The only thing that was the same was Pete running into walls. It wasn't that he was stupid, he was fearless, and there weren't any warning tracks in those days. The grass grew right up to the base of the walls, so there was no underfoot warning given outfielders that danger was approaching. There wasn't any foam rubber covering on the concrete either. That's why Pete Reiser almost died at Ebbets Field that night. They were playing the Pirates, who weren't much of a team, but they had a couple of guys who could hit the ball long. One of them was Cully Rickert, and he hit one out to deep center. The ball and Pete Reiser got into the wall at the same time. Pete's glove shot up and the ball banged into the pocket with a swack, and Pete's head banged into the concrete with a thud. They brought out the stretcher, and for one, maybe a dozen times in his life, Pete Reiser was carried off a ball field. I ran downstairs to the clubhouse and into the trainer's room where Doc Wendler, the team trainer, was examining Pete. Soon the team doctor arrived, and then a priest. I don't suppose another ball player ever had received last rites in a ballpark instead of inclusion in Cooperstown, which was the measure of his raw talents. In his second season in the Bigs, when he was 22, Pete Reiser led the National League in batting at .343 and slugging with .558. That season he hit 39 doubles and 17 triples, both tops in the National League. In another year, he stole 34 bases when that was enough to lead the league. 7 times that year he stole home with his famed hand pat slide. He had some pop enough for 14 homers, but he was not really a home run hitter. He was more like a short Dave Winfield, a complete ball player, except that he never made much money. In fact, when the Cardinals signed him as a 17-year-old kid, Pete Reiser was paid a $100 bonus and a $50 a month salary. 2 years later, when Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis declared Pete a free agent on a technicality, he exploited the situation by signing with the Dodgers for another $100 bonus. You've heard of phenoms in Florida? Pete Reiser, invited to the Dodger camp at age 20 because Leo DeRocher wanted to see this bundle of talent the organization had just signed, had the baseball writers running for their thesauruses. In his 11 at-bats swinging against big league talent in exhibition games, Reiser hit 4 homers, 4 singles, and drew 3 walks, batting lefty and righty. He was playing shortstop then. They sent him to Elmira to make an outfielder out of him. They had a young shortstop coming along then, a kid named Pee Wee Reese, who quickly became Pete Reiser's best buddy. Now Pee Wee Reese verges on Cooperstown, and Pete Reiser is gone. If the Dodgers had kept Pete Reiser at shortstop, who knows? If rubber padding and outfield warning tracks had been put in big league parks sooner, who knows? I really like Dick Young's work. He was a phenomenal sports writer back in the day, and I'm really glad to see that he took the time to write about Pete Reiser uh, when he went on to the Field of Dreams. And so uh, he had finished off his article by saying, basically, I wonder what would have happened if Pete Reiser had been a shortstop instead of like the outfield. If that had happened, Reiser probably would have gotten to the Hall of Fame. I really have no doubt about that. Who knows in which direction Reiser would have actually gone? Would have he gotten injured? And usually, like an injury like that would have completely destroyed somebody's career. He was very, very lucky on multiple occasions. He just had a lucky horseshoe or something like that throughout his career. And so I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about Pete Reiser, and obviously, like I had heard quite a bit about research before I was a vintage card collector. I'm not saying he's the reason why I became a vintage card collector, but he was one of those reasons because I had a lot of people in my family who had actually watched Pete Reiser and other ball players back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. And so it was through family stories. Back in 94, I switched from modern to vintage, but I already had these stories ingrained in my cranium. And so it kind of made that transition a little bit better. I already knew who a lot of these ball players were by the time I was like 17 or 18, and then I studied up on a lot of other guys too that I was kind of curious about, and obviously like Pete Reiser was somebody that I had known and but wanted to find out more about. And I wasn't exactly sure about the game in which this had happened, where he had received the last rites, although I had heard about it not only from family members but by people who had actually watched Pete Reiser play. I almost forgot to mention something about this. This is from SGC. They graded it. They haven't been grading autographed cards since because of the scandal that broke where they were grading bogus autographs. And so uh, Pete Reiser again, he missed the grading or the show boom of the 1980s for the most part. So this autograph is probably from the 1970s. I'd have to guess. Maybe even like the late 60s. It's really kind of hard to tell, but the autograph is actually quite nice. He did have a very nice autograph, and I really did kind of want to mention a lot of those other ball players too, and their game by game performances because a lot of that stuff gets missed, and a lot of people don't like talk too much about game by game performances. It gives you like a perspective of what's going on in the league at the time with these games. I kind of like today, really, but in a historical context of what's going on, you get a better picture of what the American National League are doing uh, in the newspapers and the press during this time. I think this is kind of interesting too, where these kind of stories can spark the imagination of somebody who, maybe a kid or somebody who maybe wants to collect vintage and may not know how, because that happens. And that was in my case too. I wasn't quite sure how to get into vintage when I wanted to make that transition in '94 completely. I had already started when I was like 12 years old, so uh, the '94 strike really kind of like made that happen permanently. But Pete Reiser is definitely a very interesting ball player. He's really the kind of the stuff of legends, if you will. So, guys, I'm going to leave it here, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say about Pete Reiser. If you have any favorite cards of his or any stories, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And until the next time, guys, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.